Hi students, today through this video we are stepping into the enchanting world of fairies, a world that has fascinated humanity for centuries. This article is titled Modern Perception of Fairies from Folklore to Pop Culture. Now this article invites us to explore how these magical beings have traveled through time and cultures, transforming along the way. Okay, see, you imagine a tiny, shimmering figure with wings fluttering in the moonlight. Fairies, with their enchanting charm and mystery, have been part of the human imagination since ancient times. They were once seen as powerful, almost untouchable beings connected to nature and the seasons. Different cultures have their own versions, from the tall, radiant Siddhe of Celtic tradition to the mischievous tricksters of European folklore. But fairies are not only part of old stories or old tales. As we moved into the modern world, they also moved with us, adapting to new forms of storytelling. They appear in books, in art, in movies, and even they have become icons in today's pop culture. So, through this article, we will look at their evolution, the evolution of fairies from the ancient stories where they were both feared and respected to the modern day portrayals where they emerge as complex um, characters. So, as we dive into this topic, let's keep an open mind and a bit of childlike wonder. Let's discover how fairies have shaped our imagination and why they are still very important, why they still hold a special place in our hearts. Okay, so over to the essay, the article. So, these are the key points that we'll be discussing. The ancient origins and folklore. We talk about fairies, how they originated in ancient folklore across various cultures, and how they are often seen as nature's spirits or supernatural beings. And they possess certain specific features, characteristics. Okay, see, traditionally, fairies are depicted as small, winged, ethereal beings, and they possess magical abilities. So we'll talk about their characteristics, then the cultural impact and symbolism. That means in folklore, fairies are often associated with nature, with magic, with supernatural, and places beyond human understanding. So it or these fairies, they symbolize the connection between humanity and the mystical world. So we'll talk about the cultural impact, then its evolution over time, from ancient myths to medieval literature. Fairy tales adapted fairies to reflect many things. In each society, fairies depict many things. Okay, so in some societies they are considered as very divine figures. In some societies they are considered as very evil or mischievous spirits as well. So, uh, we'll discuss all that. Then, their role in literature and art, like how fairies have become popular in art and literature during the different ages. Then, the modern interpretations in contemporary pop culture. How has fairies transformed into characters in movies, in books, in games, etc. And we also talk about the enduring appeal, how fairies continue to captivate audience, and how uh, themes or stories related to fairies have a timeless quality, have a timeless nature. They always possess this magic, wonder, and that otherworldly experience. People love such themes, such stories. So that is what we'll be discussing in the enduring appeal. So these are the key points that forms the content of this article. So now let's start. Let us look at their history. Now, to understand how we see fairies today, we need to look back at what or where they came from in folklore and mythology. And different cultures around the world have their own stories about fairies. Okay, so in this article, we'll be looking at the Celtic folklore, European folklore, Asian folklore, and African folklore. The Celtic people or the Celtic culture refers to ancient tribes and societies who originated in Central Europe and then eventually spread to Western Europe. Okay, and they are now in regions like Ireland, Scotland, Wales, Britain, France, then parts of Spain and the British Isles. So all these parts came to be called the Celtic area, Celtic region. So here we are going to look at the Celtic folklore and what were their beliefs related to fairies. In Celtic traditions, fairies are known by names like Sithe, Fairy, Fae, or Aosi. Now, these fairies were believed to live in ancient mountains and were seen as guardians of nature. They protected the nature. Now, unlike the tiny fairies we often think of today, Celtic fairies were tall, beautiful beings. They lived in a parallel world, but they also crossed the human world. They also came into the human world. Okay. Now these fairies, they had strong connections to the land, and they were associated with the changing seasons. So they represented the cycle of life. So this was how the Celtic tradition thought or considered fairies. Now, when we move on to European folklore, in Europe, fairies are viewed in many different ways, from helpful spirits to tricky troublemakers, problem makers. They can be helpful as well as problem makers. In British folklore, fairies were linked to fairy rings. Okay, and these fairy rings, what are the fairy rings? They were considered to be gateways to the magical world. So in British folklore, they had a belief in something called fairy rings, which they considered as a gateway to enter the magical world of fairies. So according to them, fairies could be kind protectors of nature. They can be very good. They can protect the nature. Okay, but at times they can also be unpredictable. We cannot predict their behavior. Sometimes they can be problem makers. So some stories say fairies helped lost travelers, while there are also other stories which tell that they might lead people astray in the forest, in the wilderness. People may go lose their lives or lose their way, get lost in the forest. Okay. Now there are other beliefs about these British folklore, I mean the European folklore. We have the Scandinavian folklore, for example, and Scandinavia refers to regions in northern Europe, which includes the present day countries like Norway, Sweden, Denmark, etc. So, so according to their folklore, known as the Scandinavian folklore, they call the fairies as Huldra. Okay, Huldra. And what is Huldra? Huldra is a beautiful forest spirit with a hidden tail. Okay, it has a tail so beautiful, it has a hidden tail. And they believe that this Huldra can mesmerize you with its beauty. They are very alluring, they are very attractive, but at the same time, they can also be dangerous. So, all these stories and myths show the complex nature of fairies in the European folklore. Next, we move on to the Asian influence. In Asia, we find beings similar to fairies, like the Apsaras in Hindu mythology and the Hulijing in Chinese folklore. You might have heard or seen these Apsaras at least in TV serials, in mythological series, etc. Right? So, what are these Apsaras? These Apsaras are very beautiful. They are celestial nymphs known for their beauty and grace, and they are often linked to water bodies and gardens, representing harmony between human and nature. Okay, and then when you look at the Chinese folklore, they also had these fairies whom they called Hulijing or fox spirits, because these spirits or these fairies are always accompanied by fox. And the Hulijing, they can change shape, and they are known for being both helpful and deceptive. Sometimes they might cheat you. Okay, so they are sometimes helpful, they're sometimes deceptive. So this shows a mix of trust and uncertainty in stories about the fairy-like beings in Asian cultures. So that's what the Asians had. Not only this, there are many different types of fairies, beliefs regarding fairies, mythologies regarding fairies, but we are just talking about some of the very prominent ones mentioned in this article. Okay. Now next, we move on to African mythology, African folklore. African folklore also has its own unique take on fairies. While not always the same as Western fairy tales, many African traditions include supernatural beings. And one such example is the Aziza. And Aziza is a small mystical being that live in forests. They are also connected to nature. Aziza are seen as protectors of the environment, and they share similarities with Western fairies, because Western fairies are also seen as guardians of the natural world, right? So, Aziza, their role is also protecting the nature. So, by exploring the Celtic, European, Asian, and African cultural perspectives on fairies, we can see how they have evolved and continue to capture our imagination in different ways across the globe. So, each culture has something to hold on to about such supernatural beings. Okay. And now let's look at how they are represented in literature and art. So, for that, especially when you look at English literature, we credit William Shakespeare. We see the influence of Shakespeare. He made a huge impact on how fairies are seen in literature. There is a play by him called A Midsummer Night's Dream. And in that play, he introduced a fairy called Puck. And Puck is also called Robin Goodfellow. And Puck is a clever and playful fairy who represents the mischievous nature of fairies. He is very mischievous, not okay, very playful, but very intelligent, very clever, like a child. And Shakespeare uses very witty and poetic language to bring Puck to life. Witty means very humorous. He uses very humorous, witty, and poetic language to bring Puck to life. And in this play, A Midsummer Night's Dream, we see how fairies interfere in the lives of humans. Okay. Another prominent character is Tinkerbell. Tinkerbell, a very small fairy, and she is introduced in J.M. Barrie's story, Peter Pan. Okay, and Tinkerbell, the fairy, is very loyal to Peter Pan. Okay, she is famous for her sparkling wings, her playful smile. Okay, so she symbolizes that perfect fairy, that helpful fairy. And in the story, Tinkerbell is portrayed as very protective, fiercely protective, and sometimes jealous, adding emotional depth to her character. Okay, so uh, you see that Tinkerbell has become a very iconic figure in literature and pop culture. Then, during the Victorian era, Victorian age, which falls in the 19th century. So, during this Victorian era, also, we see so many artists uh, bringing to life many fairy characters. Okay, they created very whimsical and sometimes very eerie paintings that highlighted the otherworldly beauty of fairies. And one such artist is John Anster Fitzgerald. He's a Victorian artist and he created enchanting paintings featuring fairies in beautiful settings. And one such painting I have shown there. And his artwork often shows fairies in moonlit landscapes surrounded by flowers and mystical creatures. And such paintings by Fitzgerald helped to popularize the belief in fairies. Okay. Now, another Victorian artist was Richard Dadd. He also created detailed and imaginative paintings that explored fairy folklore and the human life. Now, his works often featured fairies in very fantastic magical settings, but the quality of his paintings blurs the lines between reality and fantasy. Okay, so his paintings also reflected that Victorian fascination for that magical, mystical, uh, unknown. Okay, that is a human way. The human mind is always interested in something very mysterious. We want to know more about this. See, for example, when somebody tells you a story of a ghost, you're super excited. You want to know more. You don't think about the reality of the situation, whether it is possible or not. It awakens your curiosity. So, these fairy tales are also like that. People are so interested, even today, to know about fairies and their world. Okay. Next, we move on to a very interesting controversy. It's called the Cottingley Fairies controversy. Now, one fascinating part of how we see fairies today is the Cottingley Fairies controversy because this event took place in the early 20th century in England in a place called Cottingley. Okay, now what is this Cottingley controversy? Two young girls given the photographs of these two young girls. One is Elsie Wright and the other is Frances Griffiths. Now, these two young girls claimed to have taken photographs of fairies in the woods. Woods means forest near their home. So, they claimed to have seen these fairies and they also took photographs of these fairies. So that, though, these are the photographs which they claim to have uh, taken. Now, these photographs captured the public's attention and it sparked a lot of interest. Normally, people will be interested when they see something very strange or supernatural or such mystical characters. So, people were so uh, full of wonder hearing this or seeing these photographs. But when you look at the public reaction, the photographs divided the public opinion. Many people considered that this is a hoax. Hoax means a scam, okay? Thinking that they are fake and manipulated. But a significant number of people believed that the fairies were real. Okay, even uh, many influential figures supported this these two girls and their claim. And one of the most famous supporters of the photographs was Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Hope you know him. He's the author of Sherlock Holmes detective story. So he supported these photographs and said it was authentic, it was real. He believed in the authenticity of the photographs and promoted them as evidence of the existence of fairies. Okay, so this Cottingley fairies controversy highlights how strong the fascination with fairies was during the 20th century. It shows how people were so eager to believe in the magical and supernatural elements of the world around them. Okay. So next, when we move on to fairies in pop culture, from Tinkerbell to fairy tales, we see that the 20th and 21st centuries have seen a huge increase in fairy related content in popular culture. Fairies have become iconic figures in various forms of media, captivating audiences of all ages. One such example is Tinkerbell, as I already introduced. It was a Disney character and it was portrayed in the Peter Pan animated film, which was released in 1953. And this character was very iconic, and it helped a lot in popularizing the concept of fairies. And Tinkerbell is a small creature. It has glowing wings. It has a very playful personality. It's a female with wings, and it quickly became a beloved cultural icon. And you can see that there are many products styled as per the image of Tinkerbell, just like you have Spider Man, Superman, all these toys and everything. Tinkerbell was also a very fascinating character, especially for child audience. So they bought all sorts of products related to Tinkerbell. Okay, it can be T-shirts, it can be toys, it can be some other form of merchandise. It can be a cup with the photograph of Tinkerbell. Many things. Okay, you can also see the uh, statue of uh, Tinkerbell in theme parks. Okay, so all this reinforced that modern fairy archetype. Of course, we have other Disney characters like Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, Minnie Mouse, etc. But this we are talking about fairies, and among the fairies, Tinkerbell was very popular, a very popular Disney character, both relatable to children as well as adults. And then there has been a revival of interest in fairy tales in literature, film, and television. And there are movies like Maleficent and Snow White and the Huntsman. And all this explore the darker and more complex themes, giving fairies and mythical beings important roles. Okay, hope you have seen Maleficent, and this is the character. And even you have seen the animated version or the cinematic version of Snow White and the Huntsman. And then there was a series, TV series, which was aired from 2011 to 2018. It's called Once Upon a Time. And it is another example of the ongoing fascination with fairy tales. And this show features a variety of characters from different fairy tales, such as Snow White, then Rumpelstiltskin. It is from a German fairy tale, and the Evil Queen, placing them in a modern context. Okay. So fairies like Tinkerbell and the Blue Fairy have important roles in the series. You find all these Snow White, Rumpelstiltskin, Evil Queen, Tinkerbell, all these in that series, all these fairies in that series. And they have important roles in the series. So, uh, even this shows the timelessness of the fairies and their ability to adapt to new storytelling contexts. Even if we reach 2050 and we take stories published or released during that time, even then, fairies will be relevant. That's what the point is all about. And even in contemporary literature, we see that fairy tales are experiencing a revival. Authors like Neil Gaiman and Philip Pullman, they are creating imaginative tales about fairies for adult readers as well. There are books like Stardust by Gaiman and Grim Tales by Pullman, and these works offer fresh takes on classic fairy tale themes. And they reintroduce these characters to readers, and people get to know and experience that wonder and magic of these stories. So, even such characters appear in contemporary stories, films, web series, etc. Okay, and in these works like Stardust and Grimm's Tales, fairies and other mythical characters, they take on a bit more complex roles. They challenge the traditional stories, ancient stories, and they give a bit more complex role to that fairy character. So, in short, we can see that fairies in pop culture have evolved significantly. They are moving from traditional tales to contemporary interpretations that explore their multifaceted nature. ഓക്കെ, അപ്പോൾ പണ്ട് ഉണ്ടായിരുന്ന ആ ഒരു നേച്ചറുമായിട്ട് നമ്മൾ ആ യൂറോപ്യൻ ഫോക്ലോറിലും ആഫ്രിക്കൻ ഫോക്ലോറിലും ഏഷ്യൻ ഫോക്ലോറിലും ഒക്കെ കണ്ടപ്പോൾ അവർ ആ ഒരു ഗുഡ് ബാഡ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ആ ഒരു പ്രകൃതിയുമായിട്ടുള്ള അവരുടെ ആ ഒരു ബോണ്ടിങ്, അത് മാത്രമല്ല ഇപ്പോഴത്തെ കഥകളിൽ ഫെയറീസ് റെപ്രസെൻറ്റ് ചെയ്യുന്നത്. ഇപ്പോഴത്തെ കണ്ടംപററി സൊസൈറ്റിയുമായിട്ട് ബന്ധപ്പെട്ടിട്ടുള്ള കോംപ്ലിക്കേറ്റഡ് ആയിട്ടുള്ള പ്രശ്നങ്ങളിലെല്ലാം എന്താണ് ഇൻവോൾവ് ചെയ്യുന്ന ക്യാരക്ടേഴ്സ് എന്നുള്ള രീതിയിലാണ് ഇപ്പോഴത്തെ കഥകളിൽ നമ്മൾ ഫെയറീസിനെ കാണുന്നത്. അതാണ് ഇവിടെ പറഞ്ഞു വയ്ക്കുന്നത്. ഓക്കെ, പക്ഷേ പോയിൻ്റ് ഇതാണ്, ഈ കാലഘട്ടം നമ്മളിപ്പോൾ ഫിലിം മേക്കിംഗ് മാറി, ഫിലിമിൻ്റെ തീംസ് മാറി, ഭയങ്കര എക്സ്പെരിമെൻ്റൽ ആയിക്കൊണ്ടിരിക്കുകയാണ്. തീമായാലും കണ്ടൻ്റ് ആയാലും ഫോം ആണെങ്കിലും സ്റ്റൈൽ ഓഫ് ഫിലിം മേക്കിംഗ് ആണെങ്കിലും എല്ലാം. പക്ഷേ ഇത്തരം കഥാപാത്രങ്ങൾ, ഈ ഫെയറി ക്യാരക്ടേഴ്സിനെല്ലാം ഇപ്പോഴും ആൾക്കാരുടെ ഇടയിൽ ഒരു 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 എന്താണ് അട്രാക്ഷനുണ്ട്, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അതിന് വേണ്ടിയിട്ടൊരു ഓഡിയൻസ് ഉണ്ട്. നോട്ട് ഓൺലി ചിൽഡ്രൻ ബട്ട് ഓൾസോ അഡൾട്ട്സ്. ഓക്കെ, and so we see more examples of fairies in modern literature, and like there is Holly Black's Modern Fairy Tales എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞൊരു ബുക്കുണ്ട്. And it explores a darker urban side of the fairy world. That means how fairies, when അത് എങ്ങനെയാണ് ഒരു റീ ഇമാജിനേഷനാണ്, വെൻ ഫെയറീസ് കം ടു ദ urban വേൾഡ്, ടു ദ സിറ്റീസ് ആൻഡ് ടൗൺസിലേക്ക് വരുമ്പോൾ അവർ ഫോറസ്റ്റിലും നേച്ചറുമായിട്ടൊക്കെയാണല്ലോ സാധാരണ നമ്മൾ ഫെയറീസിനെ ബന്ധപ്പെടുത്തുന്നത്. പക്ഷേ ഇത് ഒരു വേറൊരു റീ ഇമാജിനേഷനാണ്. ഈ ഒരു urban ലാൻഡ്സ്കേപ്പിലോട്ട് ഫെയറീസ് വരുമ്പോൾ അതെങ്ങനെയാണ് എന്നുള്ളതാണ്. അതാണ് ദീസ് സ്റ്റോറീസ് ആർ സെറ്റ് ഇൻ എ റിയലിസ്റ്റിക് modern day city and introduce readers to a hidden realm with both traditional fairies and streetwise urban counterparts. ഇത്തരം കഥകളിൽ, ഈ ഹോളി ബ്ലാക്കിൻ്റെ കഥകളിൽ നമുക്ക് രണ്ട് തരം ഫെയറീസിനെയും കാണാം. ട്രഡീഷണൽ ആയിട്ടുള്ള ഫെയറീസിനെയും കാണാം, ഈ സിറ്റി ലൈഫിൽ തെരുവുകളിലൊക്കെ നിൽക്കുന്ന ഫെയറീസിനെയും നമുക്ക് കാണാം. ഭയങ്കര രസമാണ് ആ ബുക്ക്. And very interestingly, Holly Black here presents the fairy world as a place filled with power struggles, with politics, with many complications, etc. അല്ലാതെ ആ ഒരു ഭയങ്കര ഒരു ഐഡിയലിസ്റ്റിക് നേച്ചർ, ആ ഒരു എൻചാൻറ്റഡ് കാസിൽ, അതൊന്നുമല്ല നമ്മൾ ഈ ഹോളി ബ്ലാക്കിൻ്റെ കഥകളിൽ കാണുന്നത്. ഇപ്പോഴത്തെ പവർ സ്ട്രഗിളും ഇപ്പോഴത്തെ പൊളിറ്റിക്സും അതിനകത്ത് ആ ഒരു കോണ്ടെക്സ്റ്റിലേക്ക് ഷീ ഈസ് പുട്ടിങ് ദ ഫെയറീസ്. ഓക്കെ, so Black is here redefining fairies as complex and morally ambiguous beings who face modern challenges. പണ്ടത്തെ പോലെയുള്ള ആ സോഫ്റ്റ് പ്ലേഫുൾ ക്രീച്ചേഴ്സ് അല്ല, കുറേ കൂടി കോംപ്ലിക്കേറ്റഡ് ആണ്. നമുക്ക് ആംബിഗ്വസ് ആണ്. ആംബിഗ്വസ് എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ നമുക്ക് ഭയങ്കര ക്ലിയർ അല്ലാത്ത, നമുക്ക് പെട്ടെന്ന് മനസ്സിലാക്കാൻ പറ്റില്ല വാട്ട് ഈസ് ദിയർ മോട്ടീവ് എന്നുള്ളത്. അങ്ങനെയുള്ള ഒരു കോംപ്ലിക്കേറ്റഡ് ക്യാരക്ടേഴ്സായിട്ടാണ് ഹോളി ബ്ലാക്കിൻ്റെ കഥകളിലൊക്കെ ഫെയറീസ് അപ്പിയർ ചെയ്യുന്നത്. ആൻഡ് ദെൻ യു ഹാവ് ജൂലി കഗാവ. അവരുടെ ഒരു അയൺ ഫേ സീരീസ് ഉണ്ട്, അത് കുറേ ബുക്സ് ഉണ്ട്. ജൂലി കഗാവാസ് അയൺ ഫേ സീരീസ്, ആൻഡ് ഇറ്റ് ഓൾസോ ടേക്സ് റീഡേഴ്സ് ഓൺ എ ജേർണി ഇൻ ടു ദ fair realm. Fey means fairy, fair realm, where ട്രഡീഷണൽ ഫെയറീസ് എക്സിസ്റ്റ് എലോങ് ദി മോഡേൺ വേൾഡ്. ഈ കഥകളിലും അങ്ങനെയാണ്, ട്രഡീഷണലും കണ്ടംപററിയുമായിട്ടുള്ള ഫെയറീസ് ഒരുമിച്ച് താമസിക്കുന്നതാണ്. ആൻഡ് the series is filled with very detailed and imagination, and it explores themes of war, intrigue. Intrigue means some sort of treachery, cheating, and love. It offers a fresh take on the classic conflict between the fairy and the humans. അപ്പോൾ ഹ്യൂമൻസും ഫെയറീസും തമ്മിലുള്ള ആ ഒരു ചില പ്രശ്നങ്ങളും കോൺഫ്ലിക്റ്റുകളും എല്ലാം വളരെ രസകരമായിട്ട് ഒരു മോഡേൺ കോണ്ടെക്സ്റ്റിൽ പ്ലേസ് ചെയ്തുകൊണ്ട് അവർ പറയുന്നുണ്ട്. ഓക്കെ. ആൻഡ് അവരുടെ ഫെയറീസ്, എസ്പെഷ്യലി ദി അയൺ ഫേ എന്ന് പറയുന്നൊരു ഫെയറിയാണ് അവരുടെ. അപ്പോൾ അത് അതിനകത്ത് മാജിക്, യു ഓൾസോ സീ ദ മാജിക് ഓഫ് ഫോക്ലോർ. അതായത് പണ്ടത്തെ കുറേ ഐതിഹ്യങ്ങളും അതിനോടൊപ്പം കണ്ടംപററി ആയിട്ടുള്ള കുറേ കാര്യങ്ങളും കൂടെ മിക്സ് ചെയ്തിട്ടാണ് അവർ ഈ കഥാപാത്രത്തിനെ അവതരിപ്പിച്ചിരിക്കുന്നത്. ദാറ്റ് ഈസ് അനദർ എക്സാമ്പിൾ ഓഫ് മോഡേൺ, what to say, modern recreation of fairies. Then talking about the allure of fairies today. See, in today's digital age, fairies continue to captivate people all around the world. അല്ലേ, ഇപ്പോഴും ഡിജിറ്റൽ ഏജ് എന്നൊക്കെ നമ്മൾ പറഞ്ഞാലും ഇപ്പോഴും ഈ ഫെയറീസിന് അതിൻ്റേതായൊരു സിഗ്നിഫിക്കൻസ് ഉണ്ട്. While they have deep roots in folklore and mythology, fairies have evolved to stay relevant and enchanting in modern culture. അപ്പോൾ ഫെയറീസിൻ്റെ ആ ഒരു റൂട്ട്സൊക്കെ പഴയ ഫോക്ലോറിലും മിത്തോളജിയിലും ഒക്കെ കിടക്കുകയാണെങ്കിലും ഇപ്പോൾ കാലം ഒരുപാട് കഴിഞ്ഞു. ഇപ്പം നമ്മൾ ഒരു ഡിജിറ്റൽ ടെക്നോളജിയുടെയും ആർട്ടിഫിഷ്യൽ ഇൻ്റലിജൻസ് എന്നൊക്കെ പറഞ്ഞ ആ ഒരു സോ കോൾഡ് വേൾഡിലേക്കൊക്കെ നമ്മൾ ഇവോൾവ് ചെയ്തുകൊണ്ടിരിക്കുകയാണെങ്കിൽ പോലും the attraction towards this topic of fairies has still not died out. Now this exploration looks at the ongoing fascination with fairies and their role in contemporary society. ഈ ഒരു ആർട്ടിക്കിളിൽ തന്നെ ആ ഒരു എവല്യൂഷനായിരുന്നു ഇത്രയും നമ്മൾ പറഞ്ഞു വന്നത്. അപ്പം നമുക്ക് ഇപ്പോഴത്തെ ഒരു സോഷ്യൽ മീഡിയ പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോംസ്, എസ്പെഷ്യലി ഇൻസ്റ്റഗ്രാം, ഹാവ് ബിക്കം ലൈവ്ലി സ്പേസസ് വെയർ ആർട്ടിസ്റ്റ് ആൻഡ് ഫാൻസ് ഷെയർ ദിയർ ലവ് ഫോർ ഫെയറീസ്. അപ്പോൾ അങ്ങനെയൊക്കെയുള്ള കുറേ അക്കൗണ്ട്സ് ഉണ്ട് ഈ ഫെയറീസിനെ കുറിച്ചും അല്ലെങ്കിൽ അതിനെക്കുറിച്ചുള്ള ആർട്ട് വർക്ക്സോ ഒക്കെ എന്താണ് അവർ ചെയ്യുന്നതും ഒക്കെ ഡിസ്പ്ലേ ചെയ്യുന്ന പേജസ് ഉണ്ട്. ദ വിഷ്വൽ ചാം ഓഫ് ഫെയറീസ്, അവരുടെ ആ ഒരു ഗ്ലോയിങ് വിങ്സ്, അവരുടെ ഒരു ബ്യൂട്ടി, ദ ക്ലോസ് ടൈസ് ടു നേച്ചർ, ആൻഡ് all this appeals to the present generation as well. Okay, and we crave for that magic in our lives. And even in Instagram we have hashtags like fairy art, fairy garden, അങ്ങനെയൊക്കെയുള്ള പോസ്റ്റുകൾ. നമുക്ക് കുറേ ആർട്ട് വർക്ക്സും ഡെലിക്കേറ്റ് ജ്വല്ലറിയും കുറേ ഡിജിറ്റൽ ഇല്ലസ്ട്രേഷൻസ്. ഇപ്പം ആർട്ടിഫിഷ്യൽ ഇൻ്റലിജൻസിൽ ഞാൻ ഈ ഇതിനകത്ത് ഉൾപ്പെടുത്തിയ കുറേ ഇമേജസൊക്കെ തന്നെ AI ജനറേറ്റഡ് ആണ്. അതിനകത്തൊക്കെ നമുക്ക് ഫെയറി ആർട്ട് എന്നൊക്കെ പറഞ്ഞാൽ തന്നെ ഇത്തരം സോഷ്യൽ മീഡിയ പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോംസിലൊക്കെ നമുക്ക് കാണാൻ പറ്റും. ദെൻ ആർട്ടിസ്റ്റ് ഫ്രം ഓൾ ഓവർ ദ വേൾഡ്, you can say that they use these platforms to creatively bring fairies to life. Okay. പിന്നെ ഞാൻ നേരത്തെ പറഞ്ഞതുപോലെ തന്നെ ഇതൊന്നും ആർട്ടിൽ മാത്രം ഒതുങ്ങിക്കൂടുകയല്ല. ഇപ്പോൾ ഈ ഫെയറി എന്ന് പറയുന്നൊരു കോൺസെപ്റ്റ്, ഇറ്റ് ഹാസ് ബിക്കം എന്താണ് വണ്ടർഫുൾ മെർക്കൻഡൈസ് ആയിട്ടുണ്ട്, ഒരു കൺസ്യൂമർ പ്രോഡക്റ്റ് തന്നെ ആയിട്ടുണ്ട്, അല്ലേ? ആൻഡ് we can see fairy themed products becoming very popular. You can find fairy motifs in clothing, in accessories, home decor, കളക്റ്റിബിൾസ് എക്സെട്ര. ഇപ്പോൾ കുട്ടികളുടെ ബർത്ത്ഡേ ഡെക്കറൊക്കെ ചെയ്യുമ്പോഴാണെങ്കിലും അതിനകത്തൊക്കെ നിങ്ങൾ കണ്ടിട്ടുണ്ടാവുമല്ലോ, ആ ഫെയറി അങ്ങനെയുള്ള കുറേ സാധനങ്ങളൊക്കെ വെച്ചിട്ട് അവരൊരു സെറ്റ് ഉണ്ടാക്കുന്നതും ഒക്കെ, അല്ലേ? ഫെയറി ഫിഗറിൻസ്, സ്കൾപ്ചേഴ്സ്, അതിനൊക്കെ ഭയങ്കരമായിട്ടുള്ളൊരു ഫോളോയിങ് ഇപ്പോഴും ഉണ്ട്. ഇപ്പോഴും നമ്മൾ ഗിഫ്റ്റ് കൊടുക്കാനൊക്കെ ആയിട്ട് വാങ്ങിക്കുന്ന ചെറിയ ചെറിയ ഫിഗറിൻസ് ഒക്കെ ആണെങ്കിലും, സോ ബിക്കോസ് വി ലവ് ഇറ്റ്, വി സ്റ്റിൽ ഹാവ് എ പെൻജൻറ്റ് ഫോർ ദാറ്റ്. അതിനോടൊരു താല്പര്യം, അതിനോടൊരു ഇഷ്ടം, അതിനോടൊരു കൗതുകം ഒക്കെ നമുക്കിപ്പോഴും ഉണ്ട്. And these figurines or these statues remind us of the timeless charm of fairies. Okay. And then other than that, the article also concludes with a wonderful message that these fairies also tends to symbolize environmentalism and nature connection. So today we are in a world where environmental issues are very prominent, right? And in such a context, fairies have gained new symbolic meaning. They now represent the importance of preserving and protecting our natural world. The concept of fairies living in harmony with nature, അങ്ങനെയൊക്കെ ഒരു കോൺസെപ്റ്റും കൂടെ ഈ ഫെയറീസ് മുന്നോട്ട് വയ്ക്കുന്നുണ്ട്. So they remind us that we need to maintain our connection with the environment because we are in a world where technology, urbanization, everything is growing. And so the fascination with fairies encourages us to appreciate nature's beauty and work towards its preservation. About fairies, they symbolize not just magic but a deep respect for the earth ആണ്, for nature ആണ്. അതേപോലെ തന്നെ they also show a sort of enchanted escapism because we are in a world full of stress and uncertainty. And so, this allure of fairies offer a form of enchanting escapism. We have gone through fairy themed books, movies, games, everything transport audience to magical realms filled with wonder and endless possibilities. Now, these stories provide a break from daily life, allowing people to dive into enchanted worlds. Okay, so the timeless appeal of fairies also lies in their ability to transform the ordinary into the extraordinary. So, in our fast paced, technology driven world, the the desire for a touch of magic, wonder, and a connection to nature is stronger than ever. And fairies or stories about fairies, uh, such things can help us achieve that wonder and magic. So, in summary, the allure of fairies today is seen in their presence on social media, their popularity in merchandise, their symbolic connection to nature, and their role in providing escapism from everyday life. So, this enduring fascination reflects our what to say, our collective yearning for magic and our deeper connection to the world around us. So, that is this article is all about. Thank you.